By the time the heat had begun to press down with its familiar breathless weight, the rangers were already moving slowly across the open grassland, their footsteps softened by dry soil and scattered seed heads. Nothing in the distance seemed unusual at first. The savanna stretched outward in pale gold and muted green, dotted with low shrubs and distant silhouettes of grazing antelope. Then, gradually, one shape refused to change. A lone lion lay stretched beneath the sun, unmoving, his mane dulled by dust, his ribs rising and falling in shallow, uneven rhythms. They adjusted their pace without speaking, instinctively slowing as they drew closer. Experience had taught them that stillness in a predator could mean many things. Sometimes it was rest. Sometimes it was patience. Sometimes it was something more uncertain. Heat shimmered around the animal's body, bending the air into wavering lines. His tail lay slack against the ground. Flies gathered and drifted away again. One ear twitched faintly as if responding to a sound no one else could hear. At a cautious distance they stopped. Binoculars lifted in unison, scanning for signs that were easy to miss. A faint tremor passed through the lion's flank. His breathing was shallow, almost hesitant, as though each breath required quiet negotiation with exhaustion. The muscles along his shoulders seemed rigid, held in place by effort rather than strength. A thin line of dried blood marked the fur near his hind leg, partially hidden by dust and grass. The wind moved gently through the savanna, carrying the smell of sun-warmed earth and distant water. Small birds hopped nearby, unafraid, sensing no immediate danger. The lion's eyes remained half-closed, pupils barely visible beneath heavy lids. When a shadow passed over him, he shifted slightly, dragging one paw forward with visible difficulty, then letting it fall again. One ranger lowered his binoculars and spoke barely above a whisper. "Easy, boy," he murmured, more to steady himself than to reach the animal. The words drifted into the open air and dissolved before they arrived. They circled slowly, keeping their distance, careful not to force movement from a body that seemed to have none to spare. From another angle, the injury became clearer. The leg bore swelling near the joint, the fur matted and stiff. Each breath caused a subtle tightening around the wound, a reflex of pain that the lion no longer tried to hide. Occasionally, his chest lifted more deeply, followed by a soft, hoarse sound that escaped his throat, not a roar, not a warning, but a low, uncertain exhale. It was the sound of an animal suspended between instinct and fatigue, still alert enough to sense presence, yet too drained to respond with strength. The sun continued its steady climb, bleaching the colors of the land. Sweat traced quiet paths down the rangers' backs. No one rushed forward. No one raised their voice. They waited, watched, and measured each movement, knowing that haste could fracture what little trust remained. Another voice broke the silence, barely audible. "He's still with us." The words carried neither triumph nor despair, only careful acknowledgement. Around them, grass leaned and straightened in the passing breeze. Far away, a distant herd shifted position, their movement rippling across the plain like slow water. The lion's breathing persisted, fragile yet stubborn, rising and falling beneath the unyielding sky, as clouds drifted lazily overhead and the day held its quiet breath alongside him. The heat lingered in slow waves above the grass as one rescuer stepped forward from the quiet line of watchers. His movement was unhurried, measured in small, deliberate shifts of weight that kept his presence gentle and predictable. Each step pressed lightly into the brittle soil, leaving shallow impressions that faded almost immediately. He kept his eyes lowered at first, not in fear but in respect, allowing the lion's senses to register him before his gaze ever did. The animal's chest continued its fragile rhythm, lifting and settling as if uncertain whether it could afford another breath. At several meters away, the rescuer paused. He lowered himself gradually, resting on one knee then the other until he was level with the grass. The wind brushed past his face and carried his scent forward, mingling it with dust, dry leaves, and distant water. The lion's ear flicked again, sharper this time. One eyelid lifted slightly, revealing a dull amber eye that followed the smallest motion. The gaze held no aggression, only wary awareness, like a door cracked open just enough to listen. "It's okay," the rescuer whispered, his voice barely rising above the movement of air through grass. The sound was soft and steady, stripped of urgency. It settled into the space between them and remained there, unchanged. The lion shifted his head a few centimeters, then stopped as if the effort had cost more than expected. His lower jaw trembled faintly before he closed his mouth again. Dust clung to the edge of his whiskers. A slow breath passed through his nostrils, carrying a faint, uneven rasp. The muscles along his side tightened, then loosened, responding to pain in small, involuntary waves. He did not try to rise. He did not retreat. He simply watched. The rescuer stayed still. Time stretched quietly, measured only by breathing and drifting clouds. He adjusted his posture by inches, careful not to startle. His hands rested openly on his thighs, empty and visible. Every few moments he shifted his weight to keep from stiffening, but always with slow precision. The lion's tail gave a weak twitch, dragging a thin line through the dust. A low, breathy sound escaped his throat, not a call, not a warning, but a release of strain. "Easy now," the rescuer murmured, his tone unchanged. Gradually the space between them softened. The lion's eye remained open longer. His breathing, though still shallow, found a steadier pattern. When a small bird fluttered nearby, he did not react. His focus stayed fixed on the quiet figure before him. The sun climbed higher, warming the fur along his back, drawing subtle highlights from his mane. Heat shimmered between them, blurring edges, dissolving sharpness. A faint movement passed through the lion's front leg, a tentative attempt to adjust his position. It faltered halfway and fell back into place, but the effort itself marked something important. He was responding. He was listening with his body. Trust did not arrive suddenly. It grew in fragments, in moments of stillness, in breaths taken without panic. Around them, the grass whispered softly, and somewhere far off, unseen animals shifted and moved, while the wounded lion remained where he was, awake now, quietly acknowledging the human presence beside him. The stillness that had formed between them did not disappear when the medical team approached. It shifted instead, tightening like a thin thread pulled gently from both ends. Another rescuer joined the first, then another, each moving with the same careful restraint, bodies angled slightly sideways, eyes soft, steps placed with intention. Their equipment remained close to their chests, quiet and controlled, never allowed to swing or clatter. The lion followed every change with slow, deliberate movements of his head, his gaze heavy but alert. When the nearest rescuer settled beside his colleague, the air seemed to pause. The wounded leg lay stretched at an awkward angle, swollen and stiff, the fur darkened where blood and dust had mingled. Heat radiated from the injury in faint shimmering waves. Each time a shadow passed over it, the lion's breathing wavered, as though he were bracing for something unseen. One hand moved gradually toward a small pouch. The sound of fabric shifting was barely audible, yet the lion noticed. His ears flattened slightly. His chest rose higher, faster. The muscles beneath his skin tightened in rippling lines, preparing for movement that his body could no longer fully deliver. For a moment instinct surged. His front legs scraped weakly against the ground. His head lifted, mane trembling. A low sound gathered in his throat, unfinished and fragile. It was not a roar. It was uncertainty shaped into breath. His eyes widened, reflecting light and fear and memory, carrying the imprint of countless encounters where survival had meant distance and escape. The rescuer closest to him did not advance. "It's all right," he whispered, voice steady and low. "We're here." The words did not command. They rested. The lion hesitated. His body leaned forward, then faltered. Pain flickered through his frame in a visible tremor. His attempt to rise collapsed into stillness, leaving him suspended between motion and surrender. Dust settled slowly around his paws. His breathing became uneven, quick for several seconds, then gradually slowed as if he were negotiating with his own instincts. Hands remained visible. Movements remained minimal. One rescuer extended a padded mat inch by inch, sliding it across the soil without lifting it. Another prepared bandages, fingers moving with quiet efficiency. No one rushed to touch him. They waited for his breathing to find rhythm again. The lion's head lowered. Not abruptly. Not in defeat. It lowered as if guided by exhaustion and cautious acceptance. His chin came to rest against the earth. His eyes stayed open, watching, but their sharpness softened. A faint sigh escaped his nostrils, warm and uneven, stirring a small cloud of dust. When the first gentle contact was made near his shoulder, it was feather-light. He flinched once, then did not pull away. His muscles tensed, then loosened. The sound he released was barely more than air, a breath carrying both discomfort and restraint. "Good, easy," another rescuer murmured. Slowly treatment began. Cleaning, supporting, wrapping. Each movement was deliberate, separated by pauses that allowed the lion to adjust, to process, to remain present. His tail twitched weakly once, then lay still. His breathing steadied into shallow, persistent waves. Around them, the savanna continued its quiet rhythm. Grass bent under passing wind. Insects hummed faintly. Far away life moved on. Within that small circle of patience and restraint, something fragile took shape. Not submission. Not defeat. A temporary surrender born of exhaustion and quiet trust. The lion remained where he was, wounded and wary, yet allowing human hands to work beside his breathing, beneath the wide, unbroken sky. The rhythm of treatment had settled into something steady and quiet, a careful exchange between human hands and an exhausted body. The bandage lay secure. The swelling had been cooled. The lion's breathing, though still shallow, no longer trembled with panic. It rose and fell in patient waves, as if he had accepted this fragile pause in his long struggle. The rescuers remained close, but relaxed their posture slightly, sensing that the most dangerous moment had passed. Sunlight shifted slowly across his flank. One rescuer noticed it first. A subtle change beneath the lion's rib cage, almost imperceptible, like the faint ripple of water beneath still skin. At first, it seemed like nothing more than muscle responding to touch or pain. Then it happened again. A small, uneven movement, independent of breath, rising softly and fading. He leaned closer, careful not to disturb the animal. Another rescuer followed his gaze. They did not speak. The lion lay motionless, eyes half open, gaze unfocused yet calm. His chest continued its slow rise and fall. But beneath it something stirred. A gentle tightening. A delicate shift. A quiet pulse that did not belong to injury or exhaustion. Understanding moved through the group in silence. She was not only wounded. She was carrying life. The realization did not arrive with shock or celebration. It came softly, like the first hint of wind before rain. The swollen leg, the fatigue, the long hours of stillness beneath the sun, all of it reshaped itself in their minds. Her weakness had not come from injury alone. It had been layered with the weight of another fragile existence growing within her. One rescuer whispered almost unconsciously, "You're strong, so strong." The lioness's ear flicked faintly. Her breathing deepened for a moment, then slowed again. A small tremor passed through her abdomen, followed by a barely visible contraction. She shifted her hind legs slightly, instinct guiding movements her mind no longer had strength to command. Dust clung to her fur. Sweat darkened the soil beneath her. The heat pressed down, unrelenting. Yet within her stillness, life continued its quiet work. No one rushed. No one moved closer than necessary. The team adjusted without discussion, creating space, preparing silently for possibilities that had not existed minutes before. Water was brought nearer. Shade was extended. Hands moved slower than ever. The lioness released a low, strained breath, almost a sigh. Her jaw parted slightly. Another subtle wave passed through her body. It was not yet birth. It was preparation. The body remembering ancient rhythms even in weakness. She lifted her head for a moment, eyes dull but present, scanning the small circle around her. There was no fear in her gaze now. Only awareness. Only fatigue. Only persistence. Grass whispered around them. A distant bird called once, then fell silent. The savannah seemed to lean inward, attentive. Time stretched into something weightless. Minutes lost their meaning. The rescuers watched, breathing in sync with her, adjusting to every shift, every fragile sign. Hope, which had once centered on survival alone, expanded quietly into something deeper, more complex. She was not only fighting to live. She was carrying the future within her. As the sun lowered slightly, softening its harsh edge, light brushed her mane and settled along her side. Her breathing remained steady. Beneath it, life continued to move, unseen yet undeniable, tracing gentle patterns beneath her skin while the wide plains held their silence, and the wind slid slowly through bending grass. Morning arrived without ceremony, unfolding slowly across the plains in pale gold and softened shadow. The harsh edge of yesterday's heat had eased, replaced by a gentler warmth that settled lightly over grass and stone. The lioness lay where she had rested through the night, her body stretched more fully now, her breathing deeper, steadier. The bandages remained in place, clean and secure. Her flank no longer trembled with exhaustion. Instead, it rose and fell with quiet determination. The rescuers approached at a distance and stopped. They did not surround her. They did not close in. They simply stood and watched, allowing her to become aware of them on her own terms. A breeze carried familiar scents across her nose, dust, leaves, distant water, the faint trace of human presence she had learned to tolerate. Her ears turned slowly. Her eyes opened wider than they had in days, alert and reflective. She shifted. At first, it was only a small movement, a careful adjustment of weight. Then her front legs folded beneath her, gathering strength. Muscles tightened along her shoulders and spine. She paused, breathing deeply as if measuring what remained inside her. Pain still lived in her body, but it no longer ruled it. One rescuer murmured softly, "Take it slow." The words were barely sound. With effort that showed in every line of her frame, the lioness pushed upward. Her body trembled. One leg faltered, then steadied. Dust lifted around her paws and drifted away. She stood, unsteady but upright, head lowered for balance, tail hanging loose behind her. For several seconds she remained like that, suspended between movement and stillness, listening to her own heartbeat. Then she took a step. It was short and uneven, but it was hers. Another followed. Then another. Each movement rewrote the fear that had once surrounded her. Her shoulders rolled cautiously. Her weight shifted and settled. She adjusted her pace to what her body could give, never forcing, never rushing. The injury held, supported. Her breathing deepened with exertion but did not break. The rescuers did not follow. They remained where they were, hands relaxed at their sides, eyes attentive and quiet. They watched as she moved farther from their circle, crossing patches of light and shadow, passing through grass that brushed against her legs like gentle hands. Once she stopped and looked back. Her gaze rested on them briefly. It held no challenge, no dependence, only awareness, a recognition of shared time and shared stillness. Then she turned away again and continued. The savanna opened before her. Low hills softened the horizon. Distant animals moved like slow clouds. Wind carried the scent of open space and belonging. She walked toward it with careful resolve, her silhouette growing smaller with every step. Behind her no one spoke. They stood in silence, holding the moment without trying to keep it. The sun climbed higher, warming the earth. Grass bent and straightened. Somewhere far away, a herd shifted and murmured. The lioness disappeared into the tall grass, her form dissolving into light and movement, leaving only the quiet memory of breath, patience, and survival. And as the wind moved gently across the plains, it carried that memory onward, weaving it into the endless rhythm of the land.